Revenge is a very common theme in storytelling. When someone wrongs or harms a character, people want to see justice served. But revenge isn't that black and white. Revenge could lead someone down many paths, both good or bad, but in most cases, revenge lies in a morally gray area. For instance, in Juujuka no Rokunin, Iruma was a happy child. He had a family that loved him, a brother he looked after, and even a pet cat. The only issue in his life was bullying, but even then, Iruma could endure it, and he would always return home with a smile on his face. That is, until he met Kyo. Kyo isn't like the other bullies. He has a morbid fascination with death, and the desire to push someone to end their own life. The person Kyo wants to do this to is Iruma. At first, Kyo's experiments started off as minor acts of bullying, but over time they escalated to well beyond that. Kyo almost choked Iruma to death and ended the life of his cat, but that isn't even the worst part of it. Kyo staged an accident that led to Iruma's parents' deaths, and he put Iruma's brother in a coma. Because of this incident, Iruma has to stay in the care of his grandfather, who was an elite soldier. One day, Iruma's grandfather walks in on him while he is plotting his revenge on his tormentors. The two discuss Iruma's situation, and Iruma's grandfather decides to aid Iruma in his revenge. After 4 years, Iruma is deemed ready to enact his revenge. In most stories, revenge is often straightforward and to the point. Revenge will be enacted through a cunning plan or an epic battle. It is really slow and arduous. This is because people want their heroes to act heroically, and an honorable revenge appeals to most people. If revenge is dishonorable, what would readers think? At first, Iruma is presented as an honorable hero. He protects those he cares about, and he stands up for the weak. Similarly, Iruma also checks to make sure those he intends to enact revenge on have changed and become better people. But it soon becomes apparent that these are not acts of kindness, but instead ways for Iruma to test himself. He can fight, he can manipulate, and he can kill. That is what matters most to him. When it comes to revenge, most characters try to do something proportional to the crime. This is not just present in Juujuka no Rokunin though. Iruma always makes sure to enact the most unimaginable punishments on his victims. They are so grotesque that I cannot really describe them here on YouTube. It is after the first act of revenge where it becomes apparent that Iruma isn't really a person anymore, but a monster. He even makes the decision to torture one of his bullies instead of save his crush. The main question this story raises is, how did Iruma become such a monster? The first theory for this is that Iruma's grandfather is what turned him into a monster. For 4 years, Iruma's grandfather trained him to become a ruthless automaton, instilling techniques from World War II in Iruma. But I disagree with this sentiment. After explaining the situation to his grandfather, Iruma tells him that nobody will take his revenge away from him. Based on later chapters, we find out that the grandfather was more than capable of carrying out Iruma's revenge for him. After all, Kyo and the bullies killed his son, daughter-in-law, and put his grandson in a coma, so it would make sense for the grandfather to want to get revenge. Iruma made the active decision that he would be the one to get revenge. Revenge didn't turn Iruma into a monster. Iruma chose to become a monster in order to get his revenge. But that isn't always the case. In fukushuu kyoushitsu, Ayana was horrifically abused by her classmates throughout her school career. What Ayana went through was terrible, but despite how awful everything got, Ayana endured it, until one day, one of her classmates pushed her into oncoming traffic, where she was struck by a car. This is Ayana's breaking point. And because of this incident, she formulates a revenge plan. Ayana intends to get revenge on every single one of her classmates, both bullies and bystanders. At first, Ayana's revenge starts off simple, with her creating drama and turning her classmates against each other. For example, she creates a fake confession note in order to make a boy think his girlfriend is cheating on him. This petty revenge isn't enough for Ayana though. Over time, Ayana's revenge plots become more and more extreme, to the point where she was able to accomplish what Kyo couldn't. While it may be easy to say Ayana's revenge is a result of the abuse she faced, it doesn't really line up with how people who endure abuse in the real world act. Typically, if someone is abused and they choose to take matters into their own hands, they come to this decision because they want to end the abuse and obtain freedom. After the deed is done, the abuse victim feels relieved and can start to build a better life for themselves. Ayana's actions greatly contrast this. Her revenge doesn't involve removing the abusers, but instead tormenting them. Her actions escalate well beyond the point of ending the lives of her abusers. Instead of feeling relieved and hopeful after taking out her abusers, she instead rolls around her bed, laughing at their misfortune. In the same vein, Ayana's revenge surpasses that desire to end abuse, as she does the same things Iruma does in Juujuka no Rokunin. Another notable thing about Ayana's revenge is how when her revenge begins to impact those who are not involved, she feels excitement about harming more people. Because of how the scope of the revenge changed over time, I think it is safe to say that revenge really did turn Ayana into a monster. In King of the Labyrinth, many adventurers risk their lives by entering a strange, maze-like dungeon. By battling monsters, adventurers can make a living by collecting and selling loot. The deeper one travels into the labyrinth, the stronger the monsters will become. For Elena, the dungeon is all she has left. Her family has fallen on hard times, and she has to fight monsters just to make ends meet. On one dungeon run, Elena encounters a boss monster on the 10th floor, the Minotaur. Despite the Minotaur being a pretty strong monster, Elena thinks she could defeat it. After all, she has the protection of the Earth Goddess on her side. After battling the Minotaur, it becomes clear that Elena is greatly outmatched. Because of the battle, her gear is destroyed, and she has no way of beating the monster. In a last-ditch effort, Elena prays to the Earth Goddess, asking for strength. But Elena is too late. The Minotaur picks her up and slams her onto the ground, ending her life. Her dreams of helping her family are over, and the Minotaur has won. But Elena's prayers do not go unanswered. In some sort of mistake or misunderstanding, the Earth Goddess answered the now-deceased Elena's prayer, giving the Minotaur the strength that Elena had asked for. This caused the Minotaur to gain sentience, and the stronger it becomes, the more about the world it will be able to understand. Because the Minotaur seeks strength, it indiscriminately ends the lives of every creature it comes across, including adventurers. Due to this violence, adventurers enter the dungeon in order to avenge their peers. One group of high-level adventurers confronts the Minotaur. Because of their high levels, they believe the fight will be a breeze. To summarize, the fight is completely one-sided. The adventuring group got wiped out by the Minotaur. The adventurers came for revenge, but all they found was death. If you take a step back and really look at it, the idea of getting revenge on the Minotaur is rather foolish. Yes, from the adventurers' perspective, the Minotaur was slaying their comrades, therefore they feel the need to avenge their friends. But when you consider the monster, things are a bit different. The monsters lived in the labyrinth well before adventurers arrived. Those on the surface made an economy out of slaying monsters, and such a dangerous job obviously comes with casualties. From the monsters' perspective, invaders were coming into their home in order to kill them. Therefore, it makes sense that the monsters would retaliate. Although the monsters retaliate, they cannot even understand the concept of revenge. All the Minotaur wants to do is get stronger and survive. It doesn't really understand the consequences of killing adventurers. The adventurers in the revenge party did everything wrong. They underestimated their opponent, and their actions were driven by vengeance and greed. The path of revenge led the party to their deaths. But King of the Labyrinth isn't the only manga that explores the consequences of revenge. In Bokutachi ga yarimashita, a group of misfit kids are constantly harassed by some delinquents from another school. They are made to give the bullies money and humiliate themselves. Over time, the bullying escalates, and the delinquents kidnap one of the boys. The boy is made to fight another child, and following their fight, both are brutally beaten by the delinquents. In order to get revenge on the bullies, the boy's rich friend acquires fake explosives, and they put explosives around the delinquent school. When a button is pressed, the fake explosives will emit smoke and scare students in the school. The following day, the boys gather on a roof of a building across from the school and detonate the explosives. Except something goes wrong. Part of the delinquent school is blown up, and many students are injured and perish in the explosion, including several of the delinquents. Much like the adventurers in King of the Labyrinth, the boys in Bokutachi ga yarimashita poorly planned their revenge, but they'll also have to live with the consequences of their revenge for the rest of their lives, because they literally blew up a school. The boys are wanted not only by the authorities, but by the delinquents who survived the revenge. Bokutachi ga yarimashita really highlights the cycle of revenge. The delinquents wronged the boys, so the boys got revenge on the delinquents. Because of the boys' revenge, the delinquents now feel the need to get revenge on the boys. This creates a cycle of revenge, and this sort of thing doesn't really end until someone is taken out of the picture. Another thing Bokutachi ga yarimashita touches on is the lasting effects of revenge. The revenge negatively impacts the boys' lives, both immediately following revenge and for years to come. The boys' actions will haunt them for the rest of their lives, and I cannot really get into it without spoiling the entire story, but even the happiest moments of the boys' lives are tainted by their previous actions. Another manga that explores the consequences of revenge is Back When You Called Us Devils. 6 months ago, Yusuke Sato disappeared, and when he is finally found, he has amnesia. Now that he is returned, Yusuke lives a normal life. He does well in school, has a job, and even has a girlfriend. One day at work, Yusuke sees that his coworker, Shu, has a large burn scar on his back. Shu calls Yusuke out on staring, and tells him to come with him on a walk. During their walk, Shu says he envies Yusuke for having amnesia, as there is a lot of stuff in Shu's past that he would like to forget. Shu then tells Yusuke about the scar on his back. When Shu was younger, some bullies held him down, while one guy poured boiling water on him. The whole time Shu was suffering, the bullies just laughed at him, and the main bully was Yusuke. Shu then beat up Yusuke, and they went their separate ways. The further you get into the story, the more you realize how bad of a person Yusuke used to be. While Iruma and Ayana did horrible things out of revenge, Yusuke did horrible things because it was pleasurable to him. He would even go as far as to record his antics and use them as blackmail in order to continue abusing people. But the thing is, this was all in the past, and Yusuke cannot remember any of it. And because Yusuke is a different, more normal kid, those he hurt now want revenge on him, with the first being Shu. Revenge in this story is morally gray. It is understandable that those Yusuke bullied would want revenge, but on the other hand, Yusuke has no recollection of what happened in the past, and he doesn't really know what people are getting revenge on him for. Because you see the story from Yusuke's perspective, the reader is going to feel more inclined to side with him, but if you think about it from his victim's point of view, view, revenge is completely justified in their eyes. Yusuke is also very different from the other protagonists in these stories. Aruma, Ayana, and the Misfits retaliated after being victimized, and the Minotaur can't even understand what revenge is. But those stories focus on victims getting revenge, but Back When You Called Us Devils examines the person revenge is being sought after. It would be easy to end this video with a fancy moral message, or definitive statement on revenge, but I don't really think revenge is as straightforward as that. Revenge is a very multifaceted thing, and because of that, so many stories have their own perspectives and looks at revenge. There are loads of manga about revenge, and these were just some of my favorites. Thank you all for your support.
Later, gamers.